Do you even have a government, or is this just cosplay? Sneered the American investor, laughing as he tossed a dossier across the table. 28-year-old Zola Komu, a reformist leader from Kinshasa, froze. Her team had flown to Geneva to discuss the launch of new African money, but instead were met with mockery, legal threats, and outright disrespect. "We'll sue you for fraud if this goes public," he added. What they didn't know, what would shake the room minutes later, was that Zola wasn't just the delegation lead. She was Ibrahim Traoré's special envoy, and the daughter of Congo's sitting president. In the heart of Ouagadougou, President Ibrahim Traoré sat in his office, reviewing a thick stack of documents outlining recent achievements in the Dignity Through Self-Reliance program. This initiative had grown into more than just domestic policy. It had become a symbol of Burkinabe defiance against foreign dependency and a spark of inspiration for nations across Africa seeking to reclaim their autonomy. As the late afternoon sun filtered through the window, his assistant Marie entered the room hurriedly, her face clouded with concern. "Mr. President," she said, handing him a tablet, "you need to see this right away. Senator J.D. Vance made a statement about you during a live interview in the United States." Traore looked up, intrigued. "What did he say?" Marie hesitated. "He said your policies are naive. That Africa needs USAID's help to survive. He even accused you of playing revolutionary leader while letting your people suffer." A faint frown creased Traoré's face, but his expression remained composed. He took the tablet, pressed play, and watched the interview unfold. On screen, Senator Vance sat confidently, his tone smug and condescending. "Africa," he declared, "needs to accept that it cannot prosper without Western guidance. Leaders like Ibrahim Traoré might mean well, but their populist rhetoric and isolationist dreams will only plunge their countries into collapse." Traoré turned off the video, his face unreadable. He had anticipated this. Resistance to the global status quo would not go unchallenged, especially not by those who benefit from it. After a moment of silence, he spoke softly. "Marie, prepare a press conference. Tomorrow. We need to answer this." Marie nodded and left immediately to make the arrangements, fully aware that what would happen next could reshape how the world viewed Burkina Faso. The following day, the presidential palace was packed with local and international journalists. Tension buzzed through the air as everyone waited to see how President Traoré would respond. Dressed in traditional Burkinabe attire, a proud visual declaration of cultural sovereignty, he stepped up to the podium. His eyes scanned the room calmly, his voice clear and deliberate. "Yesterday," he began, "Senator J.D. Vance suggested that our country's survival depends on foreign aid. He implied that our policies are misguided, and that without the West, we will collapse." The room fell into total silence. "Let me be very clear," he continued. "Burkina Faso does not need charity. We need respect." A soft murmur rose among the press. Traoré raised a hand, calling for quiet before pressing on. "Our people have endured colonial rule, exploitation, and centuries of imposed dependency. Yet each time, we have risen. We do not build our future on pity. We build it with our own hands, through strength, dignity, and determination." He paused, then revealed a new initiative designed to accompany the country's ongoing land reform. It was called Africa is Not Charity. Its goal, to empower communities to find local, sustainable solutions without foreign strings attached. This program, he said, is not just a political strategy. It is a declaration. A declaration that Africa is not broken. We are not beggars. We are builders. And what we build for ourselves. Applause broke out across the room, especially from the African press corps. Some international reporters, however, remained visibly skeptical. One French journalist raised a question, "Mr. President, How do you plan to implement such initiatives without external funding? Isn't that too risky? Traore smiled. Everything worth doing carries risk, he said. But the greatest risk would be accepting help that keeps us on our knees. We will never compromise our dignity. We are betting on the potential of our people, and I know they will not disappoint us. With that declaration, President Ibrahim Traoré concluded his speech, igniting a storm of conversation across the continent and beyond. Social media platforms exploded with debate over African sovereignty and sustainable development. Hashtags like #RespectForAfrica and #LeadershipWithDignity trended globally, signaling a rising tide of public support for community-rooted governance and self-reliant transformation. But while the online world buzzed, Traoré's government was already putting words into action. Behind the scenes, his ministers worked with urgency and precision. The Minister of Agriculture launched consultations with village elders to identify the most neglected regions, while Marie, Traoré's trusted advisor, coordinated critical services to ensure communities had access to clean water and electricity. "We're just getting started," the president told his team during a strategy meeting. But already, change is taking root. And this transformation isn't just economic, it's cultural, social, and deeply human. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away in Washington, D.C., Senator J.D. Vance sat alone in his office, watching with unease as media outlets replayed the impact of Traoré's Africa is Not Charity initiative. Footage of newly irrigated farmland, children entering refurbished classrooms, and young African scientists building homegrown tech solutions filled his screen. There was no mistaking it. Something was shifting. "Senator," his aide interrupted, rushing in with a tablet, "the media backlash is intensifying. Your comments about President Traoré are being framed as arrogant and disconnected." "What are they saying?" Vance asked, already reaching for the device. She handed him the tablet. Headlines glared back at him: "Traoré proves Africa needs respect, not rescue." Another read, "Burkina Faso's dignity agenda challenges Western paternalism." He scrolled through with growing discomfort, realizing he had severely misjudged the weight of his words. The next day, during a follow-up television interview, Vance faced the fire directly. "Senator," the host asked pointedly, "do you still consider President Traoré's policies naive, given the visible progress on the ground?" Caught off guard, Vance paused. He shifted in his seat, then responded slowly. I admit that I may have been too critical at first. But I still believe outside support can be beneficial, if implemented the right way." His remarks were broadcast widely, triggering renewed debate about foreign aid, sovereignty, and the West's role in Africa. Some praised him for softening his stance, while others accused him of clinging to a paternalistic worldview, unwilling to fully acknowledge Africa's right to chart its own course. Back in Burkina Faso, however, Traoré paid no mind to the noise. His focus remained on the people. During a visit to a rural village, he met a woman named Awa. Once on the brink of poverty, she had benefited from the land reform program and was now teaching carpentry to other women in her community. "There was a time I couldn't even feed my children," she told a local reporter. "Now I'm helping others build a future. It's all thanks to President Traoré." That interview, too, went viral, reinforcing the growing image of Traoré as a leader not just of a nation, but of a movement. Across the continent and beyond, the message was spreading: Africa does not need saving. It needs space, respect, and the freedom to lead itself with dignity. While the world debated in headlines and hashtags, on the ground in Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traoré's team was hard at work. The Africa is Not Charity program was expanding. The Minister of Agriculture secured partnerships with local universities to provide farmers with modern training. Meanwhile, Marie, now one of the program's key coordinators, ensured rural families had access to essentials like clean water and electricity. "We're just getting started," Traore said during a strategy session. "But already, we're seeing signs of transformation, not just economic, but social, cultural, and above all, deeply human." One international journalist watching the movement unfold scribbled in his notebook, "Today in Burkina Faso, I saw the future of an Africa that values its history, honors its heroes, and builds bridges of dignity for all." Emboldened by both the criticism and the growing support, Traore doubled down on his policies. He saw Senator J.D Vance's condescending remarks not just as a challenge, but as an opportunity, a chance to prove that Africa could thrive through self-reliance and purpose, not dependency and pity. In the months that followed, Traore regularly visited rural communities, tracking the program's progress firsthand. On one such visit, he was handed a report by Marie, who now oversaw agricultural development. "Mr. President," she said with pride, "the results have exceeded all projections. Families who once couldn't even feed themselves are now generating surplus for trade." Traore smiled, visibly moved. He then walked to a small plot of land where Fatou, a young farmer, was working alongside a group of women. "Fatou," he called out warmly. She looked up, startled to see the president. "Mr. President," she gasped, wiping soil from her hands, "things are going very well here. Thanks to the program, we've expanded our planting and learned modern techniques. My mother would be proud." Traore paused. That name, Fatou's mother, was Marie, one of the program's earliest champions. In that moment, the president knew this was the true legacy, not just programs, but lives transformed, and the dreams of one generation becoming the foundations of the next. Across the ocean, in the United States, Senator J.D. Vance continued to watch with increasing unease. In a follow-up television interview, a reporter asked, "Senator, given Burkina Faso's recent success, do you still stand by your comments labeling Traore's policies as naive?" Vance hesitated, clearly attempting to reframe his stance. "Well, I admit I underestimated the impact. But I still believe outside help has its place, if used properly." His answer made headlines once again, reigniting fierce debate. Critics called out his lingering paternalism, while some applauded his partial concession. But in Africa, the narrative had already shifted. The continent was watching one of its sons reshape the terms of engagement, not through demands, but through dignity. Back in Burkina Faso, Traore pressed forward, undistracted by international noise. He knew this wasn't just about policy, it was about reclaiming the African spirit. During another rural visit, he met a woman named Awa, a land reform beneficiary now teaching carpentry to local women. "I used to struggle just to feed my children," she told a local news crew. "Now, I'm helping other women build a better future. All of this, it's because of President Traore." The clip went viral. Once again, social media was flooded with admiration and hope. Hashtags like #RespectForAfrica and #LeadershipWithDignity surged. And through it all, one truth became undeniable: Ibrahim Traoré wasn't just changing a country. He was rewriting the narrative of an entire continent. As hashtags like #RespectForAfrica and #LeadershipWithDignity trended globally, the real work never stopped. Behind the headlines and praise, President Traoré's administration remained focused on the mission. The Africa is Not charity program was scaling rapidly. The Minister of Agriculture formed alliances with local universities to provide farmers with technical education, while Marie oversaw infrastructure efforts, ensuring that even the most remote families gained access to water and electricity. "We're just getting started," Traoré reminded his team during a national strategy meeting. "But the change we're seeing is not just economic. It's social, cultural, and, above all, human." A foreign journalist observing the effort scribbled in his notebook, today in Burkina Faso, I witnessed the future of an Africa that honors its history, elevates its heroes, and builds bridges of dignity for all. In the months that followed, Burkina Faso became a global beacon of what sovereign leadership could achieve. The Africa is Not charity initiative did more than revive the economy, it rewired the national consciousness. Farmers who once relied on foreign donations were now exporting their own crops. Young scientists, once overlooked, were designing breakthrough solutions using local resources. Across the nation, a quiet revolution was taking root. In the heart of Ouagadougou, a special ceremony was held to mark the program's success. Hundreds gathered, proud farmers, schoolchildren whose education had been restored thanks to rising family incomes, and international journalists who had followed the story from the beginning. Ibrahim Traoré took the stage in traditional Burkinabe attire, his face lit with quiet pride. Today, he began, his voice thick with emotion, we are not here to celebrate statistics or policies. We are here to honor the people, the real builders of this nation. You are the pillars of Burkina Faso. The audience stood in silence, hanging on every word. When we were mocked, when Senator J.D Vance questioned our resolve, he continued, we knew we had struck a nerve. And today, we've answered with proof. We do not need paternalism. We need power, the power to shape our own future. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause. Then, he handed the microphone to Fatou, the young farmer who had once struggled to feed her family and now stood as a community leader. Mr. President, she said, her voice trembling, you gave us back something we thought was gone forever, our dignity. And more than that, you've reminded us that we can continue to inspire generations to come. The crowd applauded again as Traore embraced Fatou with deep affection. This was no longer just a policy success. It had become a spiritual transformation, a movement fueled by love, resilience, and vision. At the ceremony's end, a small child approached the president and shyly offered him a gift, an old book, beautifully restored. It had belonged to Fatou's late mother. Inside the front cover, a phrase had been handwritten, knowledge is the greatest inheritance we can leave behind. Traore smiled as he accepted the gift, deeply moved. It wasn't just a keepsake, it was a reminder. A reminder that true legacy is built through compassion, empowerment, and belief in one's own people. As the crowd slowly began to disperse, he knelt beside a young girl clutching a new notebook. She was one of the program's first beneficiaries. How are you adjusting to school? He asked gently. The girl looked up, a little shy at first, then beamed. I'm learning a lot, Mr. President. And now I want to teach others too. Traore's eyes softened. In that moment, he saw the future of Burkina Faso, confident, educated, unafraid. And above all, dignified. I want to be a teacher when I grow up, the little girl said softly, her eyes full of determination. President Traore smiled, moved by the simplicity and power of her dream. In that moment, he understood, the real measure of success wasn't in policies or press conferences, it was in the hopes rekindled in young hearts. These children were not just recipients of aid. They were the future of a new Africa, proud, educated, and empowered. Nearby, a journalist quietly jotted down a final reflection in his notebook. Today in Burkina Faso, I saw the future of an Africa that values its history, honors its heroes, and builds bridges of dignity for all. Traore's story quickly transcended politics. It became a global symbol of how dignity, humility, and gratitude could transform not only a nation, but the mindset of a continent. For many, this wasn't just a political movement. It was proof that true leadership is about seeing the value in every person and leading with purpose, not power. Back in the United States, Senator J.D Vance watched a live broadcast of the ceremony. The celebration, the music, the laughter, it all seemed to ripple with something undeniable. For the first time, there was a flicker of humility in his eyes. During a live interview later that day, he was asked once again about his earlier criticism. "This man is something special," Vance admitted, surprising many viewers. "He's proving that he can lead on his own terms. Maybe I underestimated him." His statement spread rapidly across international media. Commentators highlighted the rare display of respect across borders, a sign that even critics could be touched by the clarity of a vision rooted in human dignity. Meanwhile, in a quiet rural village in Burkina Faso, Traore continued his visits. As he walked past simple houses and bustling workshops, he was greeted by a young girl named Madou. She approached him nervously, clutching a small wrapped gift, a notebook filled with her handwriting. "Mr. President," she said, voice shaking, "this is for you. I wanted to show you that we're using what you gave us, to learn, to grow." Traore took the notebook in his hands and smiled, deeply touched. "You don't owe me anything, Madou," he replied. "You've already proven that when people are given the right tools, they don't just survive. They thrive." He looked up at the horizon, villages, fields, and classrooms stretching into the distance, and saw not a struggling nation, but a rising one. Africa, once written off as dependent and broken, was writing its own story now. And the world was watching. The story of President Ibrahim Traoré and the "Africa is not charity" initiative offers a powerful lesson about what true leadership looks like in the 21st century. At its heart, it teaches us that dignity is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Traoré's unwavering belief in his people, despite international criticism and skepticism, proves that sustainable change begins not with foreign aid or diplomatic approval, but with trust in one's nation, culture, and citizens. One of the most profound lessons from this story is the idea that sovereignty is not just political, it is personal. It is not enough for a country to have borders and a flag, it must also reclaim the right to dream independently, to define its own priorities, and to design policies rooted in the lived realities of its people. Burkina Faso, under Traoré's leadership, reminded the world that the road to progress does not always pass through Washington, Paris, or Brussels. Sometimes, it starts in a rural village, with a young girl who dreams of becoming a teacher. The program emphasized local empowerment over external dependency. Instead of waiting for solutions from abroad, Traoré's administration created pathways for communities to grow their own food, teach their own children, and build their own futures. This lesson is particularly vital for developing nations that have been locked in cycles of aid, debt, and structural adjustment programs imposed by foreign powers. Traoré's model shows that with the right leadership and commitment, self-reliance is not only possible, it is more sustainable. Another coincidental of intergenerational vision. Traoré was not just governing for the present, he was building for the future. By prioritizing education, agricultural innovation, and local infrastructure, he laid a foundation that would continue to serve the nation long after his presidency. His interaction with children like Madou and Fatou, and his decision to hand the microphone to them during public ceremonies, sent a clear message: the future belongs to those we empower today. This story also highlights the power of humility in leadership. Traoré did not respond to Senator J.D Vance's insults with anger or arrogance. Instead, he responded with facts, vision, and results. He proved that the best way to answer criticism is not through rhetoric but through impact. Even when Vance later softened his stance, it wasn't because of diplomatic pressure, it was because the truth became undeniable. Burkina Faso's progress spoke for itself. There is a crucial lesson here for global observers and critics alike: never underestimate the power of indigenous knowledge and community-driven innovation. Too often, the West assumes it has the answers for the developing world. But Traoré's success reminds us that solutions rooted in culture, tradition, and local wisdom are often more effective and resilient than imported models. The role of women in the transformation is another central lesson. From Marie, who coordinated water and electricity efforts, to Fatou, who became a community leader, and Awa, who taught carpentry to other women, the story reveals how empowering women creates a ripple effect. When women are given access to resources and leadership opportunities, they not only uplift their families but their entire communities. True national development cannot happen without gender-inclusive policies and the recognition of women as agents of change. Moreover, the story teaches us about the transformative nature of gratitude and storytelling. The simple moments, a restored book gifted to the president, a child's dream of becoming a teacher, a farmer's tearful testimony, these are not just emotional highlights, they are the heartbeat of a movement. They remind us that politics isn't just about laws and budgets, it's about people. And when leadership reconnects with the human experience, it inspires a nation to believe in itself again. Another major lesson is the importance of narrative control. For too long, Africa's image has been painted by foreign media as a continent of crisis and dependency. But Traore took control of the story. Through social media, speeches, and public celebrations, he changed the narrative, from one of helplessness to one of pride, strength, and vision. This shift is crucial for any nation seeking to reclaim its identity and inspire its people. The international response also carries a lesson for world powers. The initial mockery and doubt from foreign figures like Senator Vance reveal how deeply rooted the assumptions about Africa's incapacity still are. But the eventual respect, however reluctant, shows that genuine progress forces even the loudest critics to listen. It teaches us that while dignity may be dismissed at first, it becomes undeniable when it manifests through tangible, people-centered transformation. Finally, the story is a testament to leadership with heart. Traore's decisions weren't driven by ego or political theater, they were grounded in compassion, vision, and service. His leadership teaches us that greatness isn't measured by how many times a leader appears on global stages, but by how many lives they quietly and permanently uplift. The story of Ibrahim Traoré and the Africa is Not charity initiative in Burkina Faso has captured the attention of many, sparking intense debates and admiration worldwide. From the very beginning, it was clear that Traore's leadership was not just about politics, it was about dignity, empowerment, and rewriting the narrative of African sovereignty. This is a story that demonstrates how nations can rise from the ashes of colonialism and dependency to stand tall with their own strength, vision, and pride. One of the key aspects that has resonated deeply with audiences is how Traore's leadership is built on the foundation of dignity and self-reliance. For too long, Africa has been the recipient of foreign aid, often framed as a charity case. However, the Africa is Not charity program turns that narrative on its head. Traore's refusal to rely on foreign aid, and instead, his emphasis on empowering local communities, has inspired many. It serves as a powerful reminder that true leadership is about recognizing the inherent value and potential of your people. By focusing on agriculture, education, and local resources, Traore has shown that Africa can build its future with its own hands, without depending on external sources of aid that often come with strings attached. Another point of interest in the comments from viewers is the idea of self-determination. For many, the core message of Traore's initiative is that African nations do not need to be saved. Rather, they need respect, opportunity, and the freedom to chart their own course. When Senator J.D. Vance criticized the Africa is Not charity program, suggesting that Africa could not prosper without Western help, it was clear that his perspective was rooted in a colonial mindset, one that sees Africa as incapable of self-sufficiency. But Traore's response, rooted in the belief that Africa's prosperity is in its own hands, has been celebrated by many viewers as a bold and necessary stance. In this way, the story serves as a reminder that true development comes from within, and that countries should not accept their place as perpetual recipients of aid, but rather as nations capable of defining their own future. What also stands out in the viewer commentary is the focus on empowering the next generation. The success of the Africa is Not charity program is not only measured by its immediate results, such as improved agricultural output and access to basic resources, but also by the long-term impact it has on young people. Children like Madu, who expressed her desire to learn and grow, and Fatou, who dreamed of becoming a teacher, represent the future of Burkina Faso, a future shaped by the very policies that empower their communities. The shift in mindset, from seeing children as recipients of charity to seeing them as future leaders and changemakers, is one of the most powerful aspects of Traore's approach. It teaches viewers that when we invest in the youth, we invest in the future of our nations. What has also been discussed extensively by viewers is the humility shown by Traore in his leadership. Despite facing significant international criticism, particularly from figures like Senator Vance, he remained focused on his vision, choosing to respond with action rather than anger. His humility, particularly in the face of mockery, stands in stark contrast to the arrogance often exhibited by global leaders who assume they know what is best for others. Traore didn't need to engage in petty political battles, his actions spoke louder than words. His leadership showed that true strength comes not from dominating others, but from empowering them. In a world where leaders often see power as something to hoard, Traore's ability to listen, adapt, and build consensus has earned him the respect of both his people and the international community. The international reaction to Traore's success has also been a point of discussion in viewer commentary. The Africa is Not charity program is not just a success story for Burkina Faso, it is a global lesson. As the program grew and gained attention, it became a symbol of how local, community-driven initiatives can create lasting change. Many viewers have pointed out that what works in one part of the world can work elsewhere if adapted to local contexts. The model of local empowerment and self-reliance has become a blueprint for other countries seeking to break free from the cycle of dependency. Traore's leadership challenges the conventional wisdom that the only solutions for poor countries come from rich nations. It reminds viewers everywhere that grassroots initiatives are often the most effective means of addressing poverty and inequality. Another key lesson from this story is the importance of action over rhetoric. While many political leaders talk about change, Traore demonstrated it. His words were always backed up by concrete policies and initiatives that had a direct impact on the lives of Burkina Faso's citizens. Whether it was increasing food production, improving education, or providing basic services like water and electricity, Traore's leadership was defined by its tangible results. This approach has resonated with many viewers who are tired of empty promises from leaders who do not follow through with meaningful action. Traore's story is a reminder that true leadership is defined by what we do, not just by what we say. Finally, the viewer commentary often focuses on how Traore's leadership ignored external criticism and stayed focused on finding solutions. His ability to ignore detractors and remain committed to his vision has been admired by viewers who see this as a hallmark of effective leadership. Too often, leaders get bogged down in defending themselves against criticism. Traore, however, used that criticism as fuel to push forward and prove that Africa could stand on its own. He exemplified how focusing on solutions, rather than getting caught in negative. In conclusion, the story of Ibrahim Traore and the Africa is Not charity program serves as an inspiring lesson in leadership, self-reliance, and dignity. The viewer commentary reflects a deep admiration for Traore's ability to challenge the status quo, empower his people, and build a future grounded in respect and sustainability. His leadership shows that true progress begins when we believe in our own potential, and when we take the necessary steps to build a future without reliance on outside forces. This story is a beacon of hope and a testament to the power of local action and self-determination.